prospect positional rankings begins here and now. So looking at this quarterback class, going from 1 through 10, who's at the top, who's at the bottom? We'll discuss it and break it all down next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout with the Draft Network and your favorite and local running back guru. And as always, I got my brother, Mr. LSU. The champ is here, as always, Keith Sanchez. And you can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
Locked On family, let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man, in 2019 national champ. Yes, national champ. But you know why we're here, DP? Why we're here, man? We're here to bring championship level content surrounding the NFL draft, whether that's prospects, philosophies, breakdowns, and you know what? Even QB rankings. Yes, I said it. We're going through our QB rankings. It's time to stand on some things, right? It's time to put it on wax. It's time to figure some things out so that way y'all can hold us accountable in a couple years and be like, y'all had this quarterback ranked above this quarterback, man. So I'm extremely excited. We're going to start this segment off with ranking quarterbacks 1 through 5, and then we're going to get through 6 through 10. And then, today, we always got to finish this episode off with what? A Coach K's key thoughts, man. And this is about one of these quarterbacks, man. We're counting one quarterback out, and I don't think he's out of the QB1 discussion. So, DP, let's get this thing started, man. I want you to read off your 1 through 5. I'll read off my 1 through 5, and we're going to see where they have some discrepancies, and I think it's going to be some rather interesting conversations.
Nah, for sure, Keith. So at the top, I have CJ Stroud, quarterback from Ohio State, as my top QB, top graded QB. And number 2, I have Bryce Young. Number 3, Anthony Richardson. Number 4, Will Levis from Kentucky. And rounding up the top 5 with number 5, Hendon Hooker, quarterback from Tennessee.
Okay, cool. Now I'm going to say my 1 through 5. We already have a discrepancy, and it's at the very top. My QB1, DP, is Bryce Young. Yes, Mr. Ice Water in his veins. We've seen him get it done time and time again. Then I have CJ Stroud, right? I went with the 2 proven quarterbacks at the top. Then I went Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. Then I went Hendon Hooker, obviously the torn ACL. Maybe he would have came in higher, right? But that's my top 5. DP, we got to talk about the biggest discrepancy, man. QB1, you went CJ Stroud. I went Bryce Young. And, we've been talking, right? Like when we talked before we even started this podcast, I feel like at some point Bryce Young was your QB1. But it seems now that we closer to the draft, you just switched up. You switched sides. You went a Ohio State Buckeye. So let's talk about why CJ Stroud is your QB1. And I'll talk about why Bryce Young is my QB1 because I think I'm right.
Of course you do. I love Bryce, man. I think for me it's I look at the risk factor and everything, and I'm like, all right, like the size, of course, plays a part, the height and the weight. But then also just kind of watching Bryce, I see a young man that, has average physical tools. So I worry about, I've told you this, I worry about his ceiling and how high of a player could he, like how he can develop and become one of those top 5, top 7 type of quarterbacks. How can he get there? And when I look at CJ Stroud, I see a guy that accuracy, ball placement, touch, he throws with good velocity, anticipation as well on his throws. And I think he could attack all 3 levels at a better rate than Bryce, but also having the ability to stand in those pockets and muddy pockets and make throws because he does have the height advantage. And then and I've said this before, your boy from LSU, Joe Burrow, I see a lot of similarities from the way he plays to the way that CJ Stroud plays. I think CJ Stroud is on par as the same type of athlete as Joe Burrow. He just hasn't had to use it and activate it until we saw him against Georgia, right? So we know that he can move, make plays out of structure, and you're one of your favorite sayings. If he can do it once, he can do it again. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not going to be like, well, can I get that from him again? Yes, you can. So for me, it's just like the accuracy, I love him. He's like he's like a pitcher to me, Keith. It's just everything is so smooth for CJ. Technically, everything. He's just such a natural thrower and passer of the football. To me, he's the best pure passer in this class.
I mean, I can understand that, but I would have if we're talking QB rankings, right, and I have to argue for Bryce, I think Bryce had much like his tape in 2021 was much better, and I think that was due to the people around him. I think you seen him attack more of the field, like about throw in was that the SEC championship game where it was the double move with Jameson Williams against Keeley and the safety over the top. Like you didn't get that throw out of Bryce Young this year, but you also don't have the same level of wide receiver, right? Like this would be the first year in what probably 10 years that Alabama didn't have a first round wide receiver or just a guy on that team that we believe gonna go in the top 2 rounds, right? So as far as the receiver core, so I'm kind of leaning more on the 2021 film when we're talking about those explosive plays from Bryce Young, and I just think he can simply get the job done. Now with CJ, I like what I seen from CJ of 2 of the games, right? When we talk about the Michigan game and then you talk about that Georgia game. But watching this film, I still did see some things where I thought that it just wasn't as natural to him as it was to Bryce, right? Like if Bryce was 3 inches taller, like everybody be talking about like how Bryce was just naturally born to play the quarterback position because that's how he approaches it with ease, right? Like even the dysfunction and the clutter that goes on, like he approaches it with ease. And then I'll even say this, like with Bryce in the 2021 season, I seen more on scheduled stuff also. Like, right, like I seen like, John Mechie running, 12 yards and then a simple sit down and then he's delivering the football. So I wonder how much that receiving core had to play, kind of make a issue with it, right? Like it kind of affected Bryce and some of the things he was able to do because not only were they inexperienced, but there was also smaller wide receivers, right? And you're talking about, people like Kobe Prentice, like they were Leary, they were all undersized wide receivers also. So I thought that made for a rather interesting, contrast, I guess, from 2021 to 2022 with Bryce Young. So I had to just kind of check out both years. But I am excited about CJ Stroud. And I'll say this, even with my rankings, anybody be like, okay, Keith, you did all this and they that close. My rankings, they're half a point away. I had Bryce Young.
They're close for me too. They're like a point away. I think a full point between the two.
Yeah, I think Bryce Young at like 87.5 and I had CJ at 87. But DP, let's transition to 3, 4, and 5, right? Because these are the guys that I kind of separate the quarterbacks, right? I think I separated them into proven versus potential. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, they've proven it on a college level, right? They have the production and everything else. And then now, but we're enamored and we're excited about the potential that Anthony Richardson and Will Levis has. I think we both have them ranked the same way. But let's talk about this, DP. Like, are there any hesitations? Because I don't kind of preface, right, your thoughts, but is there any hesitation into Anthony Richardson and Will Levis with them having such high tools but not doing it on a college level?
I mean, a little bit, right? Like, and I think it's all about landing spot. Like, if either one of these guys landed with for example, I don't want either one of these guys going to a Justin Fields situation. And what I mean by that is going to a team that the GM and head coach know that they're getting fired at the end of the season. Like, that's a terrible situation to put a young quarterback in, man. We've seen so many young quarterbacks go to get thrown off the rails before their career can get started, Keith. And it's like, I don't like for those two guys, I don't want them going into that dysfunction where, okay, I know going into year 2, I'm going to have a new GM, a new head coach, a new offensive system to learn. Like, that's not stability. It doesn't set a young player up for success, right? So, like, that's where I have the most concern is, like, where do they land? Because if your plan is to, hey, we're compete for, I'll use another example. Trey Lance to the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan, you know that you guys are one of those teams that view yourself as Super Bowl or bust. So why trade 3 first-round picks to go get a raw quarterback that you know is going to take about another year, a year and a half to 2 years to get him to where he could be, right? Because it took Josh Allen 3 years, Keith, to get to where he could be. It took Jalen Hurts like 2.5 years and really 2. Well, you could say 3 because it's like rookie year, but 2 full years as a starter.
Okay, so my question is this, DP, because Trey Lance went number 3, and the expectation was that he played almost immediately, right?
Yep.
Josh Allen went pick 17, I believe, in that draft.
He went He was drafted top 10. I
Josh
remember
Allen
that.
was?
Yeah, I top 10 or 12, one of the two, because it was, I believe it was 10. Like, I think the Bills moved up and the Bills moved up and got Josh. I can look for you. I remember they moved up and got bro. Because I do recall that Josh Rosen, like
Okay, well,
yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah, they moved up from 12th to 7th. I'm
yeah.
sorry, that's why I had 17. It was 7th. Okay, so they moved up, and then Josh Allen was able to develop for 3 years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
before we was able to see that Josh Allen, now with the hype that's around Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, do you think that the expectations should be tempered a little bit, because we know that it is going to shift, right? Like the conversation is going to shift around quarterbacks. That the minute they don't play well, and we're talking about 2 top 5 picks, that it's going to be like, okay, these are busts. So how, like, where's your mindset as far as that, right? Like, we're talking about two talented quarterbacks, right, with all the tools, but we know that there's a lot of development that needs to be there. But when you draft the top 5, the room for development, or the time, for development, is not necessarily granted. Like, there's not a lot
Yeah.
of grace placed upon these quarterbacks. So that's my question. Is like, should we be talking about the conversation of, look, we have our two productive quarterbacks that we think you can slide in instantly in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and then now these two guys where it's like, give it a year or two, so to make sure you temper expectations. But I don't think expectations are tempered right now when you're talking about ranking these quarterbacks, right? Like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, wherever they get drafted, somebody's going to show them throwing the football 50 yards down the field and say, you know what, go ahead, get it done.
No, and that's a great point, Keith. And yeah, it gives you some trepidation, gives you some worries, like, because it is hard to get that time to develop, in today's, especially with social media and fans being more passionate or fanatic than ever. You know what I mean? Their voices are heard more now than they ever has been, right? Because back in the days, before our time, you could only yell at your TV or your newspaper. You couldn't go and, call into radio stations as much and, get on, do whatever they do now, social media and everything, and these GMs and coaches see it. So I think the plan, what I always say, have a plan for whoever you draft. Don't matter if it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, or Anthony Rich. Have a plan. And the plan for these two young men is, hey, I look at the Mahomes, the Jalen Hurts, the Josh Allen plan, where it's like, just be patient, whether it's they're starting from week 8 on back, or, I mean, heck, even, look at the Desmond Ridder plan, right? You got a veteran quarterback who, albeit didn't play great football the entire season, you knew that, hey, behind the scenes, I'm working with him so he can get the second year as our starting quarterback and get that first, get a couple games under his belt, let him get that taste of the NFL speed and the play of the game. But then come year 2, he's our guy. So I think you just got to have a plan, Keith. That's the main thing, is have a plan. Like I said, temper the expectations that if you're a team going for a Super Bowl, these aren't the two quarterbacks that are going to get you there year 1, man. You got to understand. But if you hit big, it's like, what I'm saying? It's truly like the lottery, Keith. You hit big, you're going to have yourself two potential elite tier quarterbacks if you allow it to happen.
I agree. So we disagree at the top with Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud, but 3 and 4 we have Anthony Richardson, then Will Levis. Rounding out the top 5 is Hendon Hooker, man. And like I said, I like to separate these two groups in a production versus a potential type situation with these guys. We know the upside with, these big arm quarterbacks with Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, and even Hendon Hooker from an athletic ability, right? He still should be thrown in that bucket as far as a potential guy. But DP, look, man, we're about to transition. We got to talk about quarterbacks 6 through 10, man, because every draft, you're talking about Bailey Zappi, you're talking about Brock Purdy, right? We can go on and on. Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. That these quarterbacks 6 through 10 that nobody's talking about, these are the guys that make the storylines. These are the guys that are still QB2s. These are the guys that when a quarterback gets hurt, they have to step in. And some of these guys have potential. I like what they can do. They're just not discussed because they're not deemed top 10 picks. But you know what? We have the entire NFL is full of 3rd rounders, 4th rounders, 5th rounders. Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts is a 2nd rounder. Kirk Cousins is a 4th rounder. Like him, we can continue to go down this list of quarterbacks that were not top 10, not first round picks that's starting NFL quarterbacks. And I think we have a couple in this draft. So coming up, we're going to get into quarterbacks 6 through 10 and go through these rankings, see what me and DP we disagree, and some of them we probably will agree on.
Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. Guys, I'm telling you right now, you can pick up where you left off with Aaron Judge because on the home runs, a pitcher going over on the strikeouts, you name it, they have it. So don't miss your chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Keith, let's get into these next tier QBs, man. I'm gonna list off my 6 through 10. At number 6, I have Jaren Hall, QB out of BYU. At number 7, I have Tanner McKee, QB out of Stanford. At number 8, I have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, QB out of UCLA. I have Stetson Bennett, QB out of Georgia. And then lastly, at number 10, I have Jake Haener, QB out of Fresno State.
Well, first of all, I have to say I am surprised, man, that Stetson Bennett made your list. Shout out to you for finding grace for Stetson Bennett, man.
I didn't have many other options, Keith.
I'm gonna read off my list, man. We agree. Jaren Hall at number 6, right? Even though this guy had a up and down Senior Bowl, right? Like I think he left a lot out there as far as expectations, and I don't think he met them at the Senior Bowl. But I'll go Jaren Hall. Then I'm going Dorian Thompson-Robinson, right? Then I'm going Clayton Tune. I'm going to read off these school names too because people may not know. Clayton Tune, quarterback from University of Houston. Then I'm going Tanner McKee, University of Stanford. And then I'm going Mad Max from Tuco University, yes, TCU, as my QB10, man. We agree on Jaren Hall. And then I think the Tanner McKee conversation, we got to have that conversation because you have him at 6, right? And I think I have him at basically 9. I'm going to be honest, man. This guy scares me. He scares me because mechanically there's a lot that needs to be done. I think it's a very slow release. You talk about path to success. I think it's a very specific path to success for this guy.
No, I agree, and you know that like we both watched him over the summer coming into the season, and he wasn't impressive this past season, right? So I look at him projecting to the league, and I'm like, okay, you can get you a Ryan Mallett or I forget the other Mike Glennon and some of these other big, like just astronomically big quarterbacks with tools, right? In terms of arm talent and stuff like Brock Osweiler and guys like that can have success if you put the right, like you know what I mean. You put the right pieces around him. He could be a old school kind of throwback pocket quarterback, right? Protect the interior offensive line for him and allow him to drive the ball into some windows. But when he's on, Keith, I'm not gonna lie, when he's on, and we've both seen it on tape, when he does get into a rhythm, he can sling it and he can throw with accuracy, hit different areas of the field, and I think he can hit all 3 levels of the field as well. But I do agree with you, technically, mechanically, with his height and his length, there's some things that you just got to work on before he could be a starter in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. But let's talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like we haven't talked about UCLA's Dorian Thompson-Robinson enough. I think this is a guy, he's continually flying under the radar. You're talking about a true dual threat quarterback. He can tote the rock. He can throw it a little bit. He worked in Chip Kelly's offense, which was, I think it was different from what people are used to having with Chip Kelly, right? So this is a guy, when I watched him, man, I seen a guy that has the potential. He needs to work on some accuracy, but there were also times where I'm like, okay, that was a pretty good ball that you threw. And so he's a solid passer. Plus, I think the athletic ability gives him an opportunity to develop in the NFL. And this is a guy that I'm highlighting and soft circling as one of those guys that can come in the league and surprise some people with what he could do.
No, 100%, man. I think the dual threat ability, he's got a good arm, Keith. He's just a playmaker, man. And it's like guys like that, you definitely take a flyer on. And I think he's better. I think he projects a little bit better than some people would think. You know what I mean? You look at the Kyler Murrays. We got Bryce Young in this class and, different stuff like that. Like he's not I wouldn't say he's not De'Aaron King coming out of Miami. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like he's a level above that as a player entirely. And if I'm an NFL team, I'm gonna tell you one of my comps for him was PJ Walker, who's a backup quarterback who's been a backup quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. I think he's a backup for Justin Fields now. You know, a guy that started off at Temple with Matt Rule, was Andrew Luck's backup in Indy, then found his way to some stardom during COVID when the XFL really got hot before COVID cooled it off essentially for 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So I think that's kind of the path for success for him, where he's just a guy that can make plays in the structure and out of structure. He may not be a long-term starter for you, but I think he could be a valuable backup.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like DTR, I like some of the things he can do, man. But listen, I'm going to talk about the back end of my list, right? Because you have a couple names that I don't have on there. I have a couple names. Like I said, man, I think my guys are probably a little bit better. We'll go Clayton Tune from Houston, the quarterback from University of Houston, man. Listen, this is a guy that's a on schedule, on rhythm. He showed accuracy. He plays, in that Dana Holgerson. I was about to say Dana White, man. Dana Holgerson offense. And it's spread, right? It's spread out. There's shots to be taken. The one knock on him is that he doesn't have the arm strength. But when you talk about a guy like a Brock Purdy, where Brock Purdy didn't have the arm strength at all, but can just simply get through their progressions, deliver the football. I even think about a guy like Bailey Zappi. I look at Clayton Tune in the same light with those two guys, in the sense of the fact of he gets through his progressions, he knows what's going on, he doesn't allow different things to speed up his process, and he delivers the football. So Clayton Tune is definitely somebody that you should be kind of looking for, as far as if you need a backup quarterback or if you're trying to make some type of transition. And then the last guy I have is, Mad Max, right? Max Duggan, we know about him. This would be a guy that's probably relegated to a dual threat quarterback role, because you're going to use his legs and then he's going to take some shot plays. So that rounds out my top 10 DP. I like the back end of this draft as far as guys when you're talking about QB2s with some potential.
No, and those are two interesting names there. And I even, when you talk about Brock Purdy, the last two guys on my list, are very Brock Purdy-esque. Jake Hayner out of Fresno State, and even Stetson Bennett. And I feel like if Brock Purdy wasn't successful as a rookie, albeit in a, how to put this, Brock Purdy was a mortal playing with the Avengers. So it's like, what I'm saying, like, bro, you don't have to win this fight. Like, you could just kind of stand in the back end and just let Iron Man and Captain America and all them, like, you let them fight. You let them do their thing, man. But he played good football. He didn't have to carry the load. And I feel like if he didn't have success the way he did, those guys probably wouldn't have gotten drafted, potentially, Keith. But with his success, I feel like teams are going to look, as a copycat league, they look at Jake Hayner and Stetson Bennett, say, man, he could do, both those guys do similar things to Brock Purdy. And if we put them in a place for success, if you're a talented team and you need a backup, a QB2, QB3, these are guys you could take flyers on. And if your starter gets hurt, they've played enough football, which was the plus in the check mark in the book for Brock Purdy. They played enough football where they won't be overwhelmed as rookies in NFL play, because they have enough snaps to know what defenses look like, post-snap, pre-snap, coverages, stuff like that. So that rounds out the back end of mine.
Yeah, I agree. I like that thought too when you're talking about them playing enough football to where they won't be overwhelmed. The back end of this draft is crazy, right? Because that's the guys that have a lot of playing experience. This the guys that, Stetson Bennett won 2 national championships. Clayton Tune has played a lot. Just keep going through these guys. Max Duggan's played a lot of football. Tanner McKee, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, right? So the back end of this draft, it'll be fairly interesting. And I think some team is going to be happy with one of those 6 through 10 quarterbacks because they have starting potential. But DP, listen, man, we knocked out our rankings, right? We went 1 through 10 to give our listeners. Listen, we 9 days away from the draft, right? We need to know these guys. We need to know our quarterbacks. We're going to continue to list off our rankings per position all the way up until the draft, man. But DP, it's time for Coach K's Key Thoughts, man. Coming up next, we have Coach K's Key Thoughts.
All right, Coach K, talk to. What's the key thought of the week, man?
All right, we're talking quarterbacks, DP. Listen, man, and we're I love to just talk to locked on family, right? We locked in. And I'm watching Will Levis yesterday. It was a special with Peyton Manning and Eli in the Manning families. And I'm watching Will Levis. And I said, you know what? My thought is this guy's going to go higher than what people think. People don't want him, but I think he's still going to be a top 5 pick. And I looked at the Indianapolis Colts, right? And that may be the landing destination. I know everybody's thinking Shane Steichen, he just worked with Jalen Hurts. right? But before he worked with Jalen Hurts, he threw with another half-field type of quarterback with a big arm, Justin Herbert. He was the quarterback's coach, DP. And I instantly thought about this because I asked you, I said, what type of offense would you want to see him in? You said, you know what? An offense similar to what Justin Herbert does. And this is before I even did the research all the way on Shane Steichen. So I think that this Will Levis to Indianapolis Colts hype, it may be something, DP. I really think it may be something.
No, Keith, that's an interesting thought, and I'm glad you brought that up because I want the family, the listeners, to understand that yes, a lot of fans are very sour on Will Levis, but there's a path for success for all of these guys. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, yes, he got some things he has to work on. Kentucky didn't do the best around him. He had a lot of young weapons, like we talked about with Bryce. He had, I think, like two true freshman receivers and like a true junior that, didn't play in the pass-happy offense. Then the OC wasn't great. The old offensive line did have their struggles. There's a path for success for this young man. And Keith, what we always see, and it happens all the time, those early quarterbacks don't always pan out, but those quarterbacks that go after them fall to better team situations where I'm not going to a piss poor team. I'm going to a team with a number one receiver, a good old line, and they can run the football. And then that puts me in the bet. Look at Justin Herbert, right? Flip that situation. Justin Herbert went to Miami where they had no run game, no offensive line, no wide receivers, right? Tua went there, and we saw Tua struggle early, right? So we saw Justin Herbert land in L.A. with the Chargers. He got Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen. It was like, you know what? This young man walked into the perfect situation. I think the Colts would give a guy that struggles with accuracy like a Will Levis, having Michael Pittman Jr., Jelani Woods, Mo Alley Cox, and then Alec Pierce, all four big targets that can stretch the field. That can make his job a lot easier. Keith, I like this thought, brother.
Yeah, and on top of that, they have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So all I'm saying is this, man. We both have Anthony Richardson in front of Will Levis. I wouldn't be surprised if Will Levis goes before Anthony Richardson. That's just a thought that I had, paying attention to the tea leaves, doing a little bit more research on who Shane Steichen is as an OC. Because like I said, we pulled straight from the Philadelphia Eagles, but we forget that he was with the Chargers as the QB coach with Justin Herbert and was in charge of that development too. So the Indianapolis Colts could be a key piece to kind of circle for Will Levis and the potential there.
Man, listen, I love that thought, Keith. I love it a lot. And it's one that we need to definitely stay locked in with, right, and for the next couple of years and see how everything goes. But, guys, as always, we appreciate y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today, every Monday through Friday for the everydayers. Come back tomorrow. We're going to get into some more positional rankings, guys, because, like I said, the draft is 9 days away. So subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it's available. Or, like I said, listen, tap in with us, not just on the show, not just on YouTube, but follow us on Twitter for Keith Sanchez at The Talent Code. I'm Damian Parson, DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team